Chosen one, why are they staring at you like you just walked through walls? Why does your presence make liars go quiet and manipulators suddenly lose their scripts? Why do people who used to dismiss you now watch you like you're carrying classified intelligence from another realm? Because you saw something they spent years trying to hide. Chosen one, they're in shock, they're rattled. They can't comprehend how someone like you, someone they wrote off, someone they counted out, someone they assumed was too old, too broken, too ordinary, figured out what they've been concealing in plain sight. Listen to me carefully. It's like God handed you a flashlight in a room full of secrets, and when you turned it on, cockroaches scattered, masks fell, the performance stopped. And now they're standing there, exposed, wondering, how the hell did you see through us? They thought you were naive. They assumed your age made you gullible. They believed your kindness meant you were blind. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, is that you weren't just getting older. You were getting sharper. Every betrayal sharpened your discernment. Every lie you survived became a lesson in detection. Every sleepless night spent in prayer downloaded supernatural intelligence into your spirit. You didn't crack their code with force. You cracked it with discernment, and that terrifies them. Because brute strength, they can fight. But spiritual sight, they have no defense against that. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what you saw that they missed. I'm going to reveal why your spirit picked up frequencies they thought were silent. And I'm going to explain why they never expected someone with your history, your scars, your age, to outmaneuver their schemes. But before we go deeper, before I unveil the mystery of your God-given radar, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity is more than financial, it's spiritual partnership. You're not just donating, you're sowing seeds that help spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message is already resonating with your soul, go ahead and let that seed of faith be planted. Now, if your spirit is reacting right now, if something inside you just confirmed, yes, I did see something, drop a yes in the comments. Let heaven take notice. Let your tribe find you. Because what you're about to discover will explain why you've been carrying this weight, why you felt different, why your eyes see what others miss. They thought you were ordinary. God knew you were oracle. And it's time you understood the weapon you've been carrying all along. How many times have you walked into a room and felt something off before anyone even opened their mouth? How many times have you known someone was lying to you while everyone else believed their performance? How many times have you sensed danger, betrayal, or deception hovering in the air like smoke? And when you tried to warn others, they looked at you like you were paranoid. You weren't paranoid, beloved. You were perceiving. There's a gift operating in you that most people don't even know exists. It's not taught in schools. It's not sold in stores. You can't download it from the internet or learn it from a podcast. This gift comes from one source and one source only, the throne room of the Almighty God. It's called discernment. And you, chosen one, let me show you something that's going to rock your understanding. Hebrews 5:14 says this, "But solid food is for the mature, for those who have their powers of discernment trained by constant practice to distinguish good from evil." Did you catch that? Trained by constant practice. Your discernment didn't just appear overnight, it was forged. Every betrayal you survived was a training session. Every liar you encountered was a test. Every manipulator who crossed your path was sharpening your spiritual senses without even knowing it. You've been in boot camp, dear one, and now you're operating at a level most people will never reach. Think about it like this. Your spirit is like a radio. Most people are stuck on one station, static, noise, surface-level conversations, fake smiles, empty promises. They hear what people say, and they take it at face value. But you're tuned to multiple frequencies. You hear what's being said, yes, but you also hear what's not being said. You pick up the undertones, the hidden motives, the agendas buried beneath polite words and friendly gestures. While others are listening to the melody, you're hearing the discord in the background. While they're watching the performance, you're seeing the strings being pulled backstage. While they're buying the image, you're reading the fine print in invisible ink. And it drives people crazy. Because they can't fool you. They can't charm you. They can't manipulate you with tears, flattery, or theatrics. You see right through it. Not because you're cynical, but because you're spiritually advanced. This is why they've called you judgmental. This is why they've accused you of being negative, suspicious, or hard to please. This is why family members have told you to just let it go, or give them another chance when your spirit was screaming danger. They didn't understand that what they called paranoia, heaven calls prophecy. What they labeled as distrust, God calls discernment. You weren't guessing when you saw through that fake friend. You weren't being dramatic when you felt uneasy about that opportunity. You weren't overreacting when you sensed something was wrong with that relationship. You were discerning. And every single time you trusted that inner knowing, that holy hesitation, you were proven right, weren't you? But here's where it gets deeper. Here's where the mystery unfolds. There's a reason you saw through the fake smiles and hidden motives. There's a reason your spirit reacts before your mind can process. There's a reason you've been given eyes to see what others miss. And I'm going to reveal that reason in just a moment. Stay with me, because this explains everything that's been happening around you. You see, beloved, discernment isn't just a nice spiritual gift that helps you avoid trouble. It's a weapon that exposes every plan built against you before it can fully form. Think about how many times the enemy tried to set traps for you through people, through opportunities, through seemingly innocent situations. But you felt it, that check in your spirit, that uneasiness you couldn't explain, that voice whispering, something's not right here, and you listened, you pulled back, you said no when everyone else thought you were being foolish. You walked away when logic said stay. You protected yourself when compassion said, give them one more chance. You didn't guess, chosen one. You discerned. And that alone exposed every scheme, every plot, every hidden agenda designed to derail your destiny. 1 Corinthians 2:14 tells us plainly, the person without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God, but considers them foolishness, for they are discerned only through the Spirit. There it is. The world can't understand your gift because they don't operate in your dimension. They're living in the natural. You're navigating the supernatural. This is why they're in awe of you now. This is why they're stunned. Because everything you warned them about came true. Every person you said was fake revealed themselves. Every situation you said felt wrong exploded exactly as you predicted. And now they're looking at you like you have access to classified information. You do. It's called the mind of Christ. But here's what I need you to understand, and this is urgent. The very gift that protects you is also the gift that isolates you. Because when you see what others can't see, when you sense what others refuse to acknowledge, you become a threat to comfortable lies. You become dangerous to people who hide behind masks. You become the one person they can't control, can't deceive, can't manipulate. And that, beloved, is exactly why they've been studying you, watching you, trying to figure out how you keep outsmarting their games. But what they don't know, what they're about to discover, is that you're not the threat. You're the revealer. And God is about to use your discernment to expose what's been hiding in plain sight for far too long. The question is, are you ready for what happens when the one who sees everything finally speaks? You know what nobody talks about? The wars you fought in silence. The 3 a.m. battles when your spouse was snoring next to you, but you were lying there staring at the ceiling, carrying weight that had no name. The decade you spent trying to save a marriage that was already dead, but you kept praying, kept believing, kept showing up to an empty table. The years you poured into children who grew up and walked away without looking back. The friends who betrayed you after 40 years of loyalty. The church that forgot your name the moment you couldn't serve anymore. Nobody saw that, did they? They see you now calm, composed, somehow still standing. But they have no idea about the nights you begged God to let you die. They don't know about the financial devastation that forced you to eat the same meal for 3 weeks straight. They never witnessed the humiliation of asking your own children for help and hearing silence on the other end of the phone. They weren't there when the doctor handed you that diagnosis and you had to drive yourself home alone because there was nobody left to call. You fought battles in the dark that would have hospitalized them. But here's what they missed. Here's what they'll never understand unless they've walked where you've walked. Those storms didn't break you. They trained your eyes. Job knew this. The man lost everything: his children, his wealth, his health, his reputation. His own wife told him to curse God and die. His friends accused him of secret sin. But Job 42:5 records something powerful. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. The suffering didn't blind Job. It sharpened his vision. It gave him the kind of sight that only comes from surviving hell with your faith intact. Every tear you cried became a lens. Every betrayal became a masterclass in human nature. Every loss became a PhD in discernment. You learned to read people like a New Yorker reads the subway, instinctively, quickly, accurately. You can walk into a room and feel the lie before anyone opens their mouth. You can sense manipulation from 3 blocks away. You can smell a fake spirit like smoke in the air. Not because you're psychic, because you've been burned enough times to recognize the heat. The widow who gave her last 2 coins in Mark 12. Jesus noticed her when everyone else was watching the rich people make a show of their donations. Why? Because he recognized what sacrifice looks like. He saw what others missed. That's you, chosen one. You notice what's invisible to those who've never had to choose between medicine and groceries. You see what's hidden from people who've never buried their dreams in the backyard at midnight because the pain was too much to keep inside the house. They think you're quiet. You're not quiet. You're calculating, you're reading, you're 3 steps ahead because you've learned that survival requires observation, not conversation. But there's one moment, one specific shift that changed everything for you, and nobody knows about it yet. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't on a Sunday morning during altar call. It wasn't when the choir was singing or when the preacher was shouting. It was in the mundane. It was in the ordinary. It was in that moment when you realized that the people you'd been trusting were the very ones sabotaging your peace. Maybe it was a comment that didn't sit right. Maybe it was a pattern you finally recognized after the 10th time. Maybe it was the Holy Spirit whispering, "Look closer," when everyone else told you to ignore your gut. But something clicked, something shifted, and suddenly you could see the whole chessboard. You saw the smiles that didn't reach the eyes. You heard the prayers that sounded holy but carried poison. You felt the energy shift when you walked into rooms where your name had just been torn apart. You recognized the script because you'd heard it before, in different voices, different settings, but always the same spirit. And that's when you stopped explaining yourself. That's when you stopped defending your truth to people who were paid to misunderstand you. That's when you started moving in silence, making decisions based on what you saw, not what they said. Proverbs 20:5 tells us, "The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out." You became that person, not because you went to seminary, because you went to hell and back, and somewhere in that fire, God downloaded wisdom that no classroom could teach. What they call luck was actually years of surviving what would have destroyed them. That job you got at the last minute, that wasn't luck. That was God responding to the prayers you prayed when you didn't even have bus fare. That relationship that fell apart before the wedding, that wasn't failure. That was divine intervention saving you from a lifetime of misery. That door that slammed in your face when you were sure it was your breakthrough, that was protection from a trap you couldn't see. You've been trained by fire, refined by loss, and educated by betrayal. And now you carry something they can't fake, can't buy, and can't learn from a book. You carry sight. But here's the question that's burning right now, the one that's going to unlock everything. if you can see what they can't see, if you can discern what they've been hiding. What exactly are you supposed to do with this gift? There comes a night when God taps you on the shoulder, not with thunder, not with angels singing, just a quiet tap in the darkness at 3 a.m. when the house is silent and your mind should be resting. But you can't sleep, can you? Because something inside you is stirring. Something ancient. Something that knows before you know. And in that holy darkness, heaven whispers what others spent years trying to hide. I'm talking to the grandmother who woke up one night with a sudden knowing about her daughter's marriage. You couldn't explain it. You had no evidence. But you knew something was wrong. The Holy Spirit downloaded truth into your spirit while your mind was still trying to make sense of the pieces. I'm talking to the grandfather who walked into a family gathering and felt the atmosphere shift. Everyone was smiling, but your gut twisted. Something was off. Someone was lying. And 3 months later, the truth came out exactly as your spirit had warned you. You see, chosen one, what happened to you wasn't coincidence. It was divine intelligence. John 16:13 tells us plainly, "When the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all truth, not some truth, not partial truth, all truth." And that Spirit doesn't need evidence, doesn't need witnesses, doesn't need proof. He simply reveals what is hidden in darkness and brings it into the light. But here's what breaks my heart. How many of you dismissed that knowing? How many of you talked yourself out of what God was showing you because you thought, maybe I'm just being paranoid. Maybe I'm too suspicious. Maybe my age is making me see things that aren't there. That was the enemy whispering doubt over divine revelation. Because the forces of darkness know something about you that you're just beginning to remember. They know you carry spiritual sight. They know that decades of walking with God have tuned your spirit to frequencies that liars can't jam. Think about this. When you were younger, maybe you missed the signs. Maybe you trusted too easily. Maybe you got burned because you couldn't see the masks people wore. But now you can spot a lie before it finishes leaving someone's lips. Now you sense manipulation before it even starts. Now you walk into rooms and read the spiritual atmosphere like a book written in your native language. That's not age making you bitter. That's wisdom making you dangerous. What you figured out wasn't intelligence. It was revelation. And that is why they are terrified. You see, people can defend themselves against accusations. They can lawyer up against evidence. They can spin stories to explain away facts. But revelation can't be argued with. When God pulls back the curtain and shows you what's really happening, no amount of smooth talking can put that curtain back up. It's like watching a movie when suddenly the lights flick on. For a split second, you see the theater exactly as it is. The illusion breaks, the magic disappears, and you realize you've been sitting in a manufactured experience. That's what happened to you. God flicked on the lights. The mask slipped off someone's face, and you saw the real person underneath. The performance stopped mid-sentence, and you caught them in their natural state. The carefully constructed facade crumbled, and the truth stood there naked and undeniable. But here's what they didn't count on. Here's what keeps them up at night now. You didn't announce what you saw. You didn't make a scene. You didn't confront them publicly or expose them dramatically. You just changed. You adjusted. You repositioned yourself with such quiet wisdom that they didn't even realize they'd lost access to you until it was already done. Proverbs 20:5 says, "The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out." You have become that person of insight. Your decades of experience, your years of betrayal survived. Your nights of prayer in the secret place, they've all combined to create something supernatural in you. You can draw out the hidden purposes of people's hearts without them even knowing they're being read. This is what terrifies manipulators. This is what unnerves narcissists. This is what makes liars stumble over their own words in your presence. You're not accusing them of anything. You're not confronting them about lies. You're just seeing. And being seen, truly seen, is the greatest fear of everyone living in deception. But beloved, do you understand what this means for your life right now? Do you grasp the weight of what God has entrusted to you? You're not paranoid, you're prophetic, you're not suspicious, you're spiritually alert. You're not cynical, you're called to discern. And the very people who are in awe of you, who are asking themselves, how did they figure this out? They're asking the wrong question. The question isn't how you figured it out. The question is, why did God trust you with this revelation? If this part is hitting home right now, if something in your chest is burning with confirmation, share this message with someone who needs it. There's someone in your life who's been doubting their own discernment, questioning their own spiritual sight. They need to know they're not crazy. They're chosen. Because what I'm about to tell you next will explain exactly why God selected you. Yes, you at your age, with your history, with your scars, to carry this level of spiritual intelligence. And when you understand why you were chosen for this, everything about your past will finally make sense. You want to know what's really happening when they look at you with that mixture of confusion and fear. You want to understand why conversations go silent when you walk into the room. Why family members suddenly change their tone mid-sentence. Why co-workers who used to dismiss you now measure every word they speak in your presence. It's because you saw it. And they know you saw it. Listen to me, chosen one. The question burning in their minds isn't, what does she know? The question terrorizing them is, how did she know? How did you detect the lie before they even finished telling it? How did you sense the betrayal 3 moves before it happened? How did you stay 10 steps ahead when they thought you were barely keeping up? They're standing there, stunned, wondering, what kind of radar are you operating on? Let me tell you exactly what's happening here. You've lived enough life, 70, 80, 90 years, to recognize patterns before they even form. You've survived enough storms to smell rain 3 days out. You've been burned enough times that now you can feel the heat of deception from across the room. Your age isn't your weakness, it's your weapon. While they were learning to manipulate, you were learning to discern. While they were perfecting their masks, you were developing X-ray vision. While they were studying human psychology to control people, you were spending decades in the presence of God, downloading supernatural intelligence that no college degree could ever teach. Proverbs 20:5 says it plainly. The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out. That's you. You're drawing out what they thought they buried. You're exposing what they swore was hidden, and they cannot figure out how you're doing it. But here's what's really eating them alive. Here's what keeps them up at night, replaying conversations, analyzing your facial expressions, trying to calculate how much you actually know. It's not just that you saw through them, it's that you stayed calm while doing it. You didn't react. You didn't expose them publicly. You didn't give them the satisfaction of an emotional response. You just watched. Quiet, steady, discerning. And that terrified them more than any confrontation ever could. Because manipulation only works on people who are desperate for approval, starving for validation, afraid of being alone. But you've walked through too much fire to fear their smoke. You've survived too many betrayals to be threatened by their schemes. You've spent too many nights with God to need anything they're pretending to offer. They expected you to fall for it. You were supposed to be the easy target, the lonely senior, the overlooked elder, the one so hungry for connection that you'd ignore every red flag just to feel included. But you didn't bite. And now they're scrambling. Let me tell you what's really happening in the spiritual realm right now. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. God has given you that same vision. While they're performing on the surface, you're reading their heart. While they're polishing their image, you're detecting their intention. And intention, beloved, intention is everything. They can control their words, they can manage their body language, they can rehearse their responses, but they cannot hide their intention from someone who's been trained by decades of walking with the Almighty. You know why Job survived Satan's attacks. It wasn't because he was perfect. It was because he had discernment rooted in relationship with God. Job 28:28 declares, "The fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to shun evil is understanding." You've spent a lifetime fearing God more than man. And now that fear has transformed into wisdom, they cannot penetrate. But here's the twist that's making them lose sleep. Here's the part that's got them nervous, anxious, looking over their shoulder. They're not just in awe, they're scared. Because they know that your clarity means something. Your discernment isn't just personal protection, it's prophetic exposure. You're not just seeing through their schemes for your own benefit. You're carrying intelligence that could unravel everything they've built on lies. Think about it. When Elisha's servant panicked because they were surrounded by enemy armies, what did Elisha do? He prayed in 2 Kings 6:17. "Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see." And suddenly the servant saw what Elisha had been seeing all along the mountain, full of horses and chariots of fire surrounding them. That's what's happening to you right now. Your spiritual eyes are open. You're seeing the angelic intelligence, the divine protection, the supernatural strategies that have been guiding your steps all along. And those who meant you harm, they're realizing they never stood a chance. Your discernment didn't just expose them, it exposed their intentions. And intention, once exposed, loses all its power. They thought they were playing chess with someone who didn't know the rules, but you weren't playing chess at all. You were operating from a completely different realm, a realm where God whispers secrets to those who've earned the right to hear them through decades of faithfulness. So, when they look at you with that mixture of awe and fear, when they can't figure out how you knew, when they're wondering what else you see that you're not saying, understand this, you're not dealing with human intuition anymore. You're operating in the gift of discernment, and that gift has just entered its most dangerous season. But the question that should be rattling in your spirit right now is this: if you can see what they're hiding, what else is God about to reveal to you? You know what breaks my heart? It's watching God's chosen ones carry shame for situations they never created, carrying blame for traps they never set, walking around with their heads down because someone else wrote a lie about their character, and the world believed it. But let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. Every setup you endured, every false accusation, every time they whispered your name in dark rooms, plotting your downfall, God was taking notes. And in heaven's courtroom, the judge just slammed his gavel and declared, reversal. Look at Joseph, 17 years old with a dream from God. His own brothers, his own blood, threw him in a pit and sold him into slavery. Can you imagine that betrayal? The people who were supposed to protect you become the ones who destroy you. Then Potiphar's wife falsely accuses him, and he ends up in an Egyptian prison for crimes he never committed. Forgotten. Buried alive in a dungeon while his destiny seemed to rot in darkness. But Genesis 41:14 says something that should make your spirit leap right now. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him quickly out of the dungeon. Quickly, not gradually, not eventually, quickly. One moment he's in chains. The next moment he's standing before the most powerful man in the world. And by sunset, Joseph wasn't just free, he was second in command over the entire Egyptian empire. God didn't just deliver him, God promoted him. In one day, everything reversed. That's the God you serve, chosen one. He doesn't do slow recoveries, he does sudden reversals. Think about Esther, an orphan girl. No status, no power, no voice. Raised by her cousin in a foreign land where her people were marked for genocide. But Esther 4:14 records Mordecai's words, "Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" The girl they overlooked became the queen who saved a nation. The enemy who built gallows to hang God's people ended up hanging on his own construction. The trap they set for you, God's about to spring it on them. Look at David, anointed as king but running for his life, hiding in caves like a criminal while Saul sat on the throne that belonged to him. But 1 Samuel 16:13 tells us, So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. The anointing came before the throne, the power came before the position. And when God's timing arrived, David didn't have to fight for his crown, it was handed to him. You've been living in your cave season, haven't you? Running, hiding, wondering if God forgot the promise he spoke over you decades ago. But what you don't see is that while you've been in the cave, God's been removing every obstacle between you and your throne. Every person who needed to exit your life has exited. Every door that needed to close has closed. Every lesson you needed to learn has been learned. The cave wasn't your prison, it was your preparation. But here's what I need you to understand about divine reversals. They don't come because you fought harder. They don't come because you manipulated circumstances, or played politics, or bent the rules. They come because you did something your enemies never expected. They plotted. You prayed. They lied. You listened. They schemed in boardrooms while you worshipped in your bedroom. They gathered allies while you gathered yourself at the altar. They spent years building cases against you while you spent years building character before God. And now, right now, God is flipping the entire script. Psalm 75:6-7 declares, "No one from the east or the west or from the desert can exalt themselves. It is God who judges. He brings one down, he exalts another." Did you catch that? Your promotion doesn't come from human hands. Your vindication doesn't depend on who likes you, who believes you, who supports you. It comes from the judge of all the earth. And when he decides to elevate you, no force in hell can keep you down. This is why they're staring at you in shock. This is why their mouths are hanging open. This is why they can't comprehend what just happened. They thought they buried you. But you weren't buried, you were planted. And what God plants always breaks through the soil at the appointed time. Every humiliation you endured is about to become your platform. Every lie they told about you is about to be exposed by the truth of your transformation. Every door they slammed in your face was protecting you from settling for less than God's best. The reversal isn't coming, beloved. The reversal is here. They expected you to stay down. God said, "Get up." They expected you to stay silent. God gave you a voice that shakes kingdoms. They expected you to fade into irrelevance. God positioned you center stage for such a time as this. You are the living proof that God keeps his promises. You are the walking testimony that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. You are the evidence that when God says it's your turn, hell itself has to step aside. Type reversal in the comments if you believe God is turning it in your favor. Declare it, speak it, let heaven witness your faith. Because what's about to happen next will leave them speechless. And you? You're going to finally understand why you had to go through everything you went through to get to where you're standing right now. Now, listen to me carefully, chosen one, because what I'm about to tell you will shatter every doubt you've carried about why you see what others miss. God didn't give you discernment for entertainment. He didn't download spiritual intelligence into your soul so you could gossip about it at Sunday brunch or feel superior in family gatherings. No, the revelation you carry, the ability to see through lies, to sense danger before it manifests, to read people's spirits like open books, that wasn't given for drama. It was given for protection. Think about it. How many times has that inner knowing saved you from signing the wrong contract? How many relationships did you walk away from because something in your spirit screamed, "Run," even though everything looked perfect on the surface? How many times did people call you paranoid, overly cautious, too suspicious, only for you to discover months later that you were absolutely right? That wasn't luck, beloved. That was God positioning you 3 steps ahead of the trap. But here's what breaks my heart. Here's what I need you to understand in the deepest chamber of your soul. You've been apologizing for your gift. You've been shrinking back from what God sharpened in you. You've been calling it anxiety when heaven calls it awareness. You've been naming it worry when the Almighty names it warfare. The reason you figured it out when others didn't isn't because you're smarter. It's because you're submitted. Look at Daniel. Babylon tried to corrupt him, seduce him, compromise him. But Daniel 5:11 tells us something stunning about this man. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your father he was found to have insight and intelligence and wisdom like that of the gods. The spirit of the holy God gave him insight. Not education, not political connections, not youth or strength, insight from heaven itself. And that same spirit, that same holy discernment lives in you right now. You know why God chose to reveal things to you and not to them? Because revelation requires character. It requires humility. It requires someone who won't weaponize truth for personal gain. God looked across your entire family line, your entire community, your entire generation, and said, this one can handle what I'm about to show them. Your discernment isn't a coincidence. It's a calling. But let me tell you something that's going to knock the wind out of your chest. The reason they're in awe of you right now, the reason they're staring at you with confused fear in their eyes, isn't just because you saw their secrets. It's because you're stepping into something they sense but can't name. You're stepping into spiritual leadership. Now I know what you're thinking. Me, a leader, I'm 73 years old. I'm nobody special. I don't have a platform or a pulpit or a degree on my wall. But that's exactly what Moses said at 80. That's exactly what Gideon said when the angel called him a mighty warrior while he was hiding in a winepress. That's exactly what every chosen vessel says right before God uses them to change history. Judges 6:12 records the moment. The angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon and said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Gideon was terrified, hiding, convinced he was the least in his family. But God didn't call him what he was. God called him what he was becoming, mighty warrior. And that's what heaven is calling you right now. Not what you feel like, not what your bank account says, not what your adult children think. What God sees when he looks at you in this season. You are entering a new authority, a new jurisdiction, a new dimension of influence that has nothing to do with titles and everything to do with trust. They can't figure out how you knew. They're baffled by your accuracy. They're stunned by your timing. And here's what's shaking them to their core. You didn't use manipulation. You didn't use force. You didn't even raise your voice. You used discernment. And discernment, beloved, is the most dangerous weapon in the kingdom of God. Because you can't fight it. You can't bribe it. You can't silence it. When God opens someone's eyes to see truth, all the PR campaigns in the world can't close them again. Proverbs 20:27 declares, "The spirit of man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all the innermost parts of his being." Your spirit has become God's flashlight, and he's been shining it into dark corners, illuminating hidden agendas, exposing what was meant to stay buried. But here's the prophetic word I need to release over your life right now. God didn't show you the truth so you could fear. He showed you so you could lead. He didn't reveal their schemes so you could hide. He revealed them so you could guide others who are still walking in blindness. He didn't give you sight to make you paranoid. He gave you sight to make you powerful. You are being repositioned right now. In this moment, the season of just surviving on your discernment is over. The season of leading others into truth is beginning. God is about to put people in your path, younger people, broken people, desperate people who need someone who's been where they are and can show them the way out. Your scars qualify you. Your survival authorizes you. Your age crowns you with the one thing this generation desperately needs: wisdom that can't be Googled. But you have to stop shrinking. You have to stop second-guessing what God already confirmed. You have to stop waiting for someone to give you permission to step into the authority heaven already granted you. They're watching you because they sense the shift. They're in awe because they feel the change. They're wondering how you figured it out because they can't comprehend that God still speaks, still reveals, still downloads battle plans to his chosen ones. And now, I'm going to tell you the most powerful truth of all, the one that will change how you walk from this day forward. You know what haunts me when I think about your life? It's not what happened to you. It's what they said about you while it was happening. They called you slow when God was teaching you to discern. They called you weak when God was building unbreakable faith in your bones. They called you irrelevant when heaven was positioning you for the most critical assignment of this generation. For 70 years, for 80 years, maybe longer, you've carried labels that were never yours. The quiet one, the emotional one, the one who thinks too much, feels too deeply, questions too loudly. Your own family whispered it. Your co-workers believed it. Even the church, the very place that should have recognized the anointing, they overlooked you, passed you by, gave your seat to someone younger, louder, shinier. But here's what breaks my heart and ignites my spirit at the same time. While they were labeling you, God was concealing you. Not hiding you in shame, beloved. Hiding you in strategy. 1 Samuel 16 tells us about David, the shepherd boy nobody remembered. When the prophet Samuel came looking for the next king, Jesse lined up all his impressive sons, tall, strong, battle-ready. But God said no to every single one. 7 sons rejected. And then Samuel asked the question that changed history. Are these all the sons you have? Only then did Jesse remember David, the forgotten one, the overlooked one, the one watching sheep while his brothers stood in the spotlight. But here's what they didn't know. Here's what your family didn't know. Here's what everyone who dismissed you failed to understand. God wasn't ignoring David in those fields. He was preparing him. Every lion he fought in secret became training for Goliath in public. Every lonely night under the stars became a sanctuary where he learned to worship. Every moment of isolation became an education in depending on God alone. That's you. That's your story. Every year they made you feel invisible. God was making you invincible. You weren't being overlooked. You were being overprepared. You weren't being forgotten. You were being forged. You weren't being passed by. You were being positioned. And now, right now, something is shifting. Can you feel it? The atmosphere around your life is changing. People who used to ignore you are suddenly paying attention. Folks who dismissed you are now studying you, trying to figure out what changed. Family members who counted you out are watching you with confusion and something that looks a lot like fear. They're asking themselves, what does she know that we don't? How did he figure this out? When did they get so different? Let me tell you exactly what happened. Jeremiah 1-5 declares, "Before I formed you in the womb I knew you. Before you were born I set you apart." God wrote your identity before your first breath. He encoded your purpose into your spiritual DNA before your parents ever met. And for decades, that identity was dormant, waiting, hidden under layers of other people's opinions and society's expectations. But something activated it. Maybe it was that heartbreak that should have destroyed you, but somehow made you stronger. Maybe it was that betrayal that should have made you bitter, but instead made you wiser. Maybe it was that loss that should have ended you, but actually awakened you. The reason they're in awe, chosen one, the reason they're confused, the reason they whisper behind your back with a mixture of shock and reluctant respect, is because you finally stepped into the identity God wrote for you before the foundation of the world was laid. You're not who they thought you were, you never were, and now they're watching in real time as the real you emerges from decades of camouflage. But this revelation isn't just about them seeing you differently. The question that will determine everything is this: do you see yourself the way God sees you now? So here we are, chosen one. You've walked through the fire. You've survived the gaslighting. You've endured the seasons when they told you that you were imagining things, that you were too sensitive, that you needed to just let it go and move on. But you didn't imagine it. You saw it. And now they know you saw it. The question burning in the heavens right now is this: what are you going to do with the revelation God entrusted to your hands? Because let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. God didn't give you discernment so you could sit quietly in the corner and mind your business. He didn't download supernatural sight into your spirit so you could play small and pretend you don't see what you see. He gave you eyes that pierce through darkness because this generation is drowning in deception, and he needed someone with the courage to call it out. Proverbs 29:18 declares, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." Vision, revelation, the ability to see what's really happening beneath the surface, that's not just a gift, beloved. That's a commission. That's a weapon. That's your assignment. You think it's an accident that you can spot a liar 3 sentences in? You think it's coincidence that manipulators get nervous when you enter the room? You think it's random that toxic people suddenly can't maintain eye contact with you anymore? No. That's the anointing of discernment resting on your life. That's the Spirit of truth operating through your senses. That's God saying, "I trust you with what others can't handle." And here's what breaks my heart. Some of you are still apologizing for it, still second-guessing yourself, still wondering if maybe you should have kept your mouth shut, stayed in your lane, minded your business like everyone told you to. Stop it. Right now. Stop dimming your light to make darkness comfortable. Ephesians 5:11 commands us, "Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them." Expose them, not ignore them, not accommodate them, not make excuses for them. Expose them. Your silence is not humility. Your silence is disobedience. God entrusted you with revelation because He knows your heart. He knows you won't use discernment as a weapon of pride. He knows you won't leverage your sight for personal gain. He knows that after everything you've been through, after every betrayal, every disappointment, every moment you've been knocked down, you still carry compassion for the broken and fury against the counterfeit. That combination is rare. That heart is tested. That spirit is proven. And now heaven is saying, it's time to step into your authority. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when you've figured out all the answers. Right now, today, this moment, because there's someone 3 states away who's being manipulated by the same spirit you just identified. There's a grandmother in Texas who's about to sign away her life savings to a con artist, and she needs someone with your discernment to sound the alarm. There's a young person in California who's on the verge of making a life-altering decision based on a lie, and God wants to use your clarity to redirect their path. You are not just a witness, you are a watchman on the wall. Isaiah 62:6 says, "I have posted watchmen on your walls. They will never be silent day or night." That's you. You're the watchman. And watchmen don't apologize for seeing danger. They shout. They warn. They sound the alarm, even when it's uncomfortable. So I'm asking you right now, will you step into the authority that's been waiting for you? Will you stop shrinking back from your calling? Will you finally own the fact that your discernment is not a curse, it's your commission? Leave a comment right now saying, "I receive my revelation." Declare it, activate it, let heaven know you're ready to walk in the fullness of what God has given you. And then share this message with someone who needs breakthrough, someone who's been doubting their own discernment, someone who needs to know they're not crazy, they're called. Your clarity is only the beginning, chosen one. There's more coming, more revelation, more authority, more impact. But it starts with you saying yes to what you've already seen. The awe they feel when they look at you, that's just the beginning. Wait until they see what happens when you stop hiding your gift and start wielding it.